going to go to Mark chapter 4. We're going to jump to verse 35, and this morning on the topic, navigating the storms of life. Navigating the storms of life. A subtitle you could write down as well if you'd like to is Jesus sleeping? Is Jesus sleeping? But this story here has impacted me and helped me walk through life probably more than any other story that I look in the moment that Jesus lived here on earth. And so we're going to dive into it today. Verse 35, Jesus has been with his disciples for a while now. He's been preaching and teaching. They've been traveling. He's been healing people. They've seen miracles, and they're just kind of doing their thing. Every time Jesus goes to a town and things get a little crazy and he's getting a little too much publicity and getting a little too popular, he says, okay, now it's time to go to a different place. And so his ministry is really just getting started. And we see him, that's where we find him in this story and what he's going to do next. So verse 35 says, as evening came, Jesus said to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up, and high waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. The disciples woke him up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" And when Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." And suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. Then he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And the disciples were absolutely terrified. "Who is this man?" they asked each other. "Even the wind and the waves obey him." God, we thank you for your word. We thank you that what took place thousands of years ago will have meaning and relevance for us today in our lives and what we're dealing with. I just pray, God, that our minds would be open to understand what you're speaking to us this morning, that our hearts would be open to receive it, Lord, and that we would allow it to change us from the inside out. We pray in Jesus' name. And God, I lift up the Arizona Wildcats to you and ask that you help them advance in the tournament today. And everybody else's team, help them too. In Jesus' name, amen. I love March Madness. Anybody going crazy yesterday? I was going crazy watching some of those games. Ooh, man, it's fun stuff. I love that. Being a guy from the state of Arizona, we don't have much water there. Like the fact that you drive around here in North Carolina and just see like ponds and lakes and streams all over the place is very foreign to us from Arizona, because we have to conserve water because we don't have enough over there. And so when I think of this storm and these disciples experiencing what they experienced, I don't have many stories to go off of, to relate to. I haven't been on the water that much in my life. But there was one day and one instance when I was caught in a storm. I was about 19 years old, and me and a few of my friends, we decided to go to this lake in Arizona called Lake Powell. Lake Powell. We're going to go and have a good weekend there. We're going to camp. We got a jet ski. We got a boat. We're going to do all this fun stuff. It's going to be a great weekend. And so we drive to the lake, Lake Powell, and as soon as we get there, people are telling us, man, there's like a big storm coming in today. And we as young, dumb college students were like, who cares? We're still going to go out there. And so we get to Lake Powell, and my buddy Sean says, hey, I'm going to jump on the jet ski and go find us a camping spot. And I said, hey, I'll come with you. And so I jumped on the back of the jet ski, and he took off, and we were having a blast. We're hitting the waves. We're getting soaked. We're having a good time. And then I noticed as we got farther and farther, he started slowing down a little bit. And I started noticing these waves on this lake that I've been to plenty of times are getting a little bigger than I've ever seen. And he slowed down quite a bit, and we finally made it into kind of this cove area, and we thought this might be a good spot. And we pull in, when we stop, and we're kind of looking around, and this guy that had his houseboats docked in this area comes out, and he's like, "Hey, are you guys looking for a place to camp?" And we said, "Yeah, this is, we got a few of us. We're trying to find a spot." He said, "Well, actually, they just put out like a severe thunderstorm warning, and they're telling everybody to get off the lake unless you're in a houseboat like me and you can anchor down and all that kind of stuff, because this thing's going to get serious." And we're like, "Okay, that's weird." And so we decided, well, let's get back on the jet ski and head back to the dock and see what everybody wants to do. And my buddy Sean, I didn't realize the reason he was slowing down, because as he got wet from the waves, he was starting to get really cold. And so he looks at me and with like this sad face says, "Brandon, can you please drive?" And I was like, "Sure, heck yeah, I'd love to drive." And so I jump on, and I do the same thing that Sean does as we start hitting these waves. It's all kind of fun. And then I realized this is why Sean wanted me to drive, because as I'm getting soaked and the temperature started dropping like crazy, I am starting to get really cold. And so I slow down, and it was nuts. I've never seen this this is a kind of a big lake, but you wouldn't experience this in a normal way. These waves were getting so big that on our jet ski we would go down into the swell, and the wave would come up higher than us. And this thing is nuts. This place is, and it's like this. It's changing. You guys know how these storms out here happen. And all of a sudden, this thing has come on us, and we're going in, and the temperature drops like 10, 15 degrees, and I'm soaking wet. Sean is hugging me and stealing all my body heat from me, and I'm starting to shake. I can't feel my hands anymore. We're barely making it. It took us about 30 to 45 minutes, what should have taken us about 5, to get back to the dock. And I'm starting to get so cold, and I'm starting to shake. My body is starting to shake. What do they call that? Hypothermia, something like that is starting to kick in. I'm starting to pray and tell God, "Lord, you can take me now." I didn't even care that I was a single and a virgin. I was like, "Lord, you can take me now." Sorry I had to say that in front of you, Mom. When I use the word, it's the only word that can kind of come close. I was miserable and in so much pain because I was so cold. We finally get to the dock, and we see all our friends. They have already taken the boat and put it on the trailer, and they've got it on the ramp, like out of the water. And they look at us like, "Where you guys been? Come on, they're telling us to get out of here. We're going to go to a hotel." Me and my buddy Sean tried our best to stay Christian in that moment, not yell at them and say a lot of bad words. We got out. We said, "You guys put the jet ski on the other trailer," and I visibly, my hands are shaking. My legs, my knees were literally shaking. I couldn't stop my body from shaking. I was so cold. And all I wanted was a dry shirt. So I'm looking around trying to find my bag that has my dry clothes in it. They left it in the boat that's on the trailer out of the water. And so I climb my way into the boat, and I grab that dry shirt. I put it on. Now I'm wearing a dry shirt, my swim shorts, and I've just got flip-flops on my feet. And I go and I stand to the edge of the boat. Now, you got to get the visual of this, okay? Now, you got the trailer and the boat. That boat's probably, 5 or 6 feet in the air by itself. I'm almost 6'2". Thanks, Mom, you held me back. Anyways, I didn't meet my dad at 6'4". I really wanted that. And I'm standing there really, so high up in the air. And my brain was experiencing hypothermia as well, because as I'm looking and saying, how am I going to get out of this boat? Because my knees are shaking. I'm so cold, I can't feel anything. How am I going to get out of this boat? The best idea I could come up with was, I'll just jump. And I literally even thought, even if I fall and I scrape up my knees, who cares? This is the worst day of my life anyways. It'll just add to it. And so as I went to go and jump, my flip-flops slipped right out from under me. And now I am heading head first to the dock, to the concrete. And it is amazing. You know how they say, time slows down? I remember there were thoughts going on in my head this is really happening. I am really falling right now. this is the worst day of my life. Those types of thoughts going in. And all of a sudden, the first thing that hit the dock was my chin. Boom. I always like to make the joke that my mom and dad are probably still paying the dental bills that took place. He said the force that I had to have hit that concrete with was pretty incredible. Because as I hit my chin, what was funny was then the next thing that hit were my feet. I did one of those things where my feet came slapping down. And I don't know where my hands were. They were back here like, we have no part of this. And so I hit, boom, and I get up, and really more than anything, that adrenaline kicks in. I'm not in pain yet. I turn around, my cousin, Uncle Jim and Aunt Kay's daughter is looking at me like, she just saw this whole thing happen. And I didn't know, but I'm bleeding profusely, and I'm thinking, why do I have sand in my mouth? How did I get sand in my mouth? I was on the dock. And so I spit the sand out. It wasn't sand, it was my teeth. And somehow the Lord saved me from the front teeth, but I cracked my molar in half, and it went all the way to my jawbone. I chipped a bunch of teeth and spit it. I was just like, oh no, this is not good. It really became not just like a bad storm that I went through, but became like a horrible moment for me in life. And we had to go to the ER. I had to get stitches. Thank God my jaw wasn't broken or anything like that. It was a few months of dental work that they had to do to fix all that kind of stuff. But that was one of my highest or biggest memories that I remember going through a storm. And so I think of these disciples as they're going through and find themselves in the storm that they're in. And I think, how did they get there? How did they get to this place? How did they handle it? And so I just want to go through this story and look at it. And the first thing that I want to point out in this story is this. They were following Jesus. They found themselves in a storm by following Jesus. We, as the American church, do not do a good enough job talking about the realities of what it will cost us to follow Jesus in life. I don't know how many sermons I've heard that have talked about, man, you follow Jesus, everything's going to work out. And technically, in the end, it does. But they act like, hey, you're going to have as much money as you need. You're going to have the health that you always need, all this kind of stuff. And we too many times tend to gloss over the fact that following Jesus may lead us into storms. Following Jesus may take us into that. It doesn't keep us from storms, following Jesus. In fact, sometimes I would submit to you that following Jesus can guarantee you that you will encounter storms in life. It is interesting to me that we can sometimes grab this book and just kind of gloss over the moments that following God and His will and His ways, that we don't like to look at the fact that those were a lot of times the reason that they were in the storms that they were in. And right here, these disciples, the one thing that they did was follow Jesus, and they found themselves in a storm. Following Jesus doesn't keep you from the storms. It may lead you even more to the storms. And even though Jesus knows a storm is coming, He still will lead us in that direction. These are really important keys for us to embrace as Christ followers. That, hey, Jesus, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to go wherever you direct me to go. And you know what? He may choose to take me into a place that I'm uncomfortable in, that I don't want to be in, and I want to get out of as fast as I can. That's how Jesus works. I mean, we love to, our theme verse for healthy living, John 10:10, right? Thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus came that you may have life and have it to the full. We love that. Oh, yeah, I'm going to have life to the abundance. But sometimes we forget that Jesus also said in Mark 9, hey, pick up your cross. If you're going to follow me, you have to pick up your cross daily. Sometimes we forget the historical context of that statement. We hear it now and we're like, yeah, I wear a cross, or we see a cross. We have crosses and all that kind of stuff. That symbol in that day was nothing to be excited about. In fact, the symbol of a cross was not used by the church until hundreds of years later, because it had no positive connotation to it. There was not an excitement when they thought of bearing the cross. So this Messiah that they're following, saying, hey, you're going to have to pick up your cross daily and follow me, they're thinking, wait a minute. John 15, you see Jesus saying to his followers, hey, if they persecute me, they're going to persecute you. We like to think of the moments where we're just gliding on the seas and everything's smooth and easy, and this is what life is supposed to be like. This is what I've been looking forward to. If I just keep following Jesus, it'll be smooth. Actually, following Jesus may bring us to the biggest storms that we've ever been at in life. You can absolutely 100% be in the middle of God's will and still find yourself in a life-threatening storm. Which brings me to the second part that I just realized of this story. Hey, have you noticed how storms usually seem to come out of nowhere? Come on, let's be real this morning. We don't purposely, as human beings, go towards storms. We are wired to avoid those things in life. Seriously, go to your financial, advisor and tell them, I would like to go in any direction that you can send me on that will take me into the toughest parts, into the toughest seas. I've never had somebody come and say, Pastor, I need counseling. I need counseling, Pastor. Can you tell me how to find the storms in my life and go at them? We aren't wired this way. We're wired to know ease and stay away from as much trouble as we possibly can. How many of you recently were saying, hey, Lord, could you bring a storm my way? And we don't do that. The storms usually come out of nowhere. And yes, sometimes the storms can come out of the things that we've done, our own choices. I could tell you the storms that we found ourselves in plenty of times that was like, hey, who's responsible for this storm? And I had to raise my hand. That would be me. Then we have storms that you and I experience simply because we live here on earth. We live in this world, and it's fallen, and it's broken. It's full of sin and corruption. You could go from the beginning of this all the way to the end, and there's a popular phrase and thing that people, when they talk about Jesus coming again, they say, hey, what has to take place for Jesus to come again, they're getting this from the Bible, is wars, rumors of wars, famine, pestilence, debauchery, just blatant sin, these types of things. You know what I found out as I read through the scripture? That's always been happening. That's the world you and I live in. Sin has ravaged this place, and we, even with God's salvation that He's given us, are still having to live through it. So we will go through storms in life that simply happen because you and I live here in this fallen world. And as well, we can find ourselves in storms because we have an enemy who is completely against us. And his own purpose, his only purpose, is to steal, kill, and destroy from us, to us. Storms, they seem to come out of nowhere. It's interesting to me as I look at this story, one of the most interesting parts to this story is that these men that find themselves in the boat, these disciples, most of them had the knowledge and the experience to handle this boat in this storm. Most of these guys were fishermen by trade. Most of them grew up on the seas. Most of them been out there with their fathers. They've learned the trade. They know how to handle these things. And yet still in that, they find themselves in the middle of a storm not knowing how they're going to survive. And I just want to encourage you in this morning. When dealing with the storms, it's not about your abilities. It's not about your personality. It's not about your courage or your strength. Some storms take you beyond what you can handle. They take you beyond what you can handle. Now, there's a misconception. We have taken a verse out of context. 1 Corinthians 10, there is a verse that says, hey, God will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you can stand, and He'll provide a way out. And too many of us, this is like, I had to go and do this study a few years ago because somebody said, the Bible never says that God won't give you something that you can't handle. The Bible doesn't say that. We think, we've translated that and thought, oh, well, God won't take me through something I can't handle. No, that's not true at all. God will take us through things we can't handle all the time. There is 1 Corinthians 10 does say He's not going to allow you to be tempted beyond what you can stand up to, which is true. We can read in Romans, right? We're no longer bound by our sinful nature. We can live in the Spirit. We know we can beat our human nature, our sinful nature. So when He's saying that makes total sense. And hey, I'll give you a way out always. When you're tempted, He's going to give you a way out, right? That's its own thing. God will, most of the time, bring us to places in life where it's too much for us to handle. These guys were professionals. They were professionals. If anybody should know how to get through this storm, it should have been these disciples. These men were professionals. But God will let you go through things that you can't handle because He wants you seeking Him. I think it's interesting how we want to believe that we can do it on our own. That as well is the human way. That as well is definitely the American way. I pulled up my bootstraps and I made it through. I built this company from the ground up. Like all these types of phrases that you hear, you know. How'd you get there? Oh, man, I worked really hard. I figured out the disciplines and the blah, 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 you know, and all that stuff. And we are to work hard. We are to give it everything we've got. But there's going to constantly be moments in life that we find ourselves in because we're following Jesus that it's like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through this. These disciples thought they were going to die. It's not about us and our ability to handle the boat. What we're finding out, it is about who is in the boat with us. What's funny about that is the one who was in the boat, and the most important one, he was sleeping. Come on now. I mean, I know we've read these stories a lot. But this storm is big enough that these professional fishermen think they're going to drown. And Jesus found a pillow and is taking a nap in the back of the boat. Are you serious? Come on. But haven't you felt like sometimes in the storms that you've gone through, like Jesus, He's taking a nap? It's common for us when we go through these storms to feel like, hey, I'm not even sure where God is. Where are you, God? If you've been honest with yourself in seasons and moments of life, you have asked that question. Hey, God, are you here? Those moments where you and I know Him. I can't feel God. I can't hear God. What's going on? God, do you care? Do you care? I'm drowning here. Jesus in the back of the boat, sleeping. Later on in a different story where the disciples find themselves again in a storm. Jesus sees them far away, walks on water, and it says he intended to pass them by. Hello? Like, just walking on the water. Hey, guys, how you doing? See you struggling there? Gonna be all right. You know that Jesus is absolutely never overwhelmed by the storm that you and I are in. He's not overwhelmed. He's not anxious. He's not staying up at night wondering how he's going to get us through this. He's at complete peace. Why? Because he knows he's the one that created the wind and the waves. He's the one that put it into existence. John chapter 1, verse 2 through 3 says it like this. I'm going to it. There it is. He existed in the beginning with God. Go back. John chapter 1 again. There it is. Jesus existed in the beginning with God. God created everything through Jesus. Nothing was created except through him. Why is Jesus sleeping in the back of a boat? Because he knows I created all this stuff. This has nothing over me. I'm in this boat. This boat's going to be fine. That's why Jesus is sleeping. And these guys, man, they did what I hope each and every one of us does and would do in this situation. They go and they wake Jesus up. They wake him up. I seriously wonder what the conversation was. No, you wake him up. No, you wake him up. No. He hasn't slept in like 3 days. I'm not waking him up. The last time I woke him up, he got mad at me, right? I'm sure it was Peter. Peter seems to always be the one. And especially the line that said, it's like, hey, do you even care that we're drowning? We're about to drown. Here's a really important key for us. Something that these disciples got right, and you and I must get right when we go through these storms that we find ourselves in. They realized that the only way out of this was to get Jesus involved. At church, you and I, when we're in the storms that life brings our way, no matter what the reason is, whether it's our own fault, whether it's because we live in this fallen world, or because we've got an enemy that's attacking us, we have to get Jesus involved. Who do you go to when you find yourself in the middle of the storm? Our problem as humans is usually Jesus is like, we say things like this. I don't know what else to do but pray. I'll say those types of things when people are going through tough. It's like, oh man, I'm sorry. I wish I had something more. And then I say that, I'm like, what was that? We just naturally, why? Because we're still humans who want to act like and believe that we can figure this out and do it on our own merit. The storm came up. It sounds like the disciples tried on their own to figure this storm out. They realized they couldn't. At least they got this part right. They went to Jesus. The quicker you and I can get Jesus involved in the storm, the better off we're going to be. Here, listen to this though. Doesn't mean it gets the storm over quicker. It means you and I can handle this in a better way. Here's what the disciples didn't do. The key to what they didn't do that helped them in this situation. They didn't jump ship. Me and my Uncle Jimmy could sit here as pastors, and he's got a lot more years than I do in ministry. William, the amount of years you've put into ministry, pastoring people, helping people, We could tell you, Merlin, right, you could get on this conversation, all the years of ministry that you put in, now thinking of all these kids that you poured into as a youth pastor, and you're seeing them as adults. What is the hardest part for us as we pastor the church is when you see people jump ship. And they get out of the boat, and they give up on this Jesus that seems to be sleeping while the storm's going on. And all you're thinking is, if you just stayed, he was going to calm the wind and the waves. I'll be honest, sometimes in those moments when I'm trying to counsel those and give wisdom, I almost want to apologize, and I feel like the Lord's like, okay, you got to stop apologizing for this but I just wanted, the only advice I've got for you is don't give up. Don't give in. Don't jump ship. Stay in the boat. Stay with Jesus. I've mentioned this before. Jesus speaking to Peter, saying, right, he's telling all the disciples, you're all gonna betray me tonight. You're gonna leave me. You're gonna abandon me. Peter's, he's at, no, I'm ride and die. I got a sword. Here we go. I'll die with you tonight. And Jesus goes, no, actually, you're gonna deny that you even know me 3 times before the rooster crows. Right? But what he says to Peter, hey, I'm not praying that you don't fail. I'm praying that your faith doesn't fail. I know in the storms of life, we're going to fight. All I'm praying for you right now, Peter, is that you stay in the boat. You stay with me. Because when you do that, then I can use you. And when you do that, when you're restored, strengthen your brothers. Use your story to lift others up. Come on. What they didn't do is they didn't jump ship. And if I could just plant a seed that grows to such strength in yours and my heart this morning, it is that no matter what storms we go through, we're staying in the boat with Jesus. We're staying there. Because they didn't jump ship, they experienced Jesus in a whole new way. The one who calms and controls the storm itself. Jesus wakes up, gets up. However he did this, for some reason I'm seeing Charlton Heston in my head. As he stands at the end of the boat and raises his hands, says, "Storm, be still." Jesus was asleep because he absolutely knew that the storm had no power over him, and all he had to do was speak a word. He spoke a word, and this world came into existence. He spoke a word, and light and darkness were separated. He spoke a word, and there was water, and there was land. He spoke a word, and you and I were formed in our mother's womb. Jesus was asleep because he knew who controlled the storm in the first place. And for you and me, as we go through storms, we must be in tune with the one who can speak over our storms and say, "Silence. Be still." Jesus is the only one who can give you and me peace through the storms. You and I, we could sit here for many more hours today. We're not going to do that because I want to go home and I want to watch basketball. But we could. And we could tell stories of the storms that we've been through. And when we get down to the end of it, we're going to say, hey, what gave you calm? What gave you comfort? What gave you peace? And we'll all come to the same conclusion. His name was Jesus. There's a verse that says, hey, be still and know that he is God. And Jesus in this moment shows that in physical form and existence. And it says that the winds stopped. And the wording to this is just, and our English language can't even come close to getting the true meaning behind it. But the word it gives is there was a great calm. Calm. Some of you are going through things right now where you need Jesus to speak so that you can experience a great calm. Here's the best part about this story that you can hold on to for all of the rest of your life, the amount of days that you have here on this earth. When Jesus speaks, things happen. When Jesus speaks, things happen. It's why we see Jesus after everything calms down. It's why we see Jesus turn and look at his disciples and say, "You still don't believe? You still struggling with your faith in me?" But these disciples are just like you and me. We're just like them. Come on, you know, you and I, we get frustrated with our faith. And if I just have a little more faith. But see, we're battling that human side that so easily forgets the last time Jesus calmed the storm and got us through. When we were in transition between pastoral positions and waiting, I thought, man, like we've been through some storms. I'm thinking, I should be doing this better. I should be handling this storm better. It's so easy to forget. That word faith in the Greek, if you look at it as well, could be translated trust and belief. Hey, you still struggling with your faith in me? You still struggling with your trust in me? Still struggling with your belief in me? Jesus is talking to the human condition in this moment to his disciples. Something he absolutely understands where they're at. And he's encouraging them. He's calling them to, hey, you can let it all out. You can fully trust me. You can fully believe in me. You can have all your faith in me. It's the same word he uses when he's talking about the faith the size of a mustard seed that can move mountains. It's interesting that he uses that mustard seed as his example. He wants to remind you and me that it doesn't take a lot. It doesn't take a lot. It simply takes looking at the right one who actually can do something, who actually can move, who actually can calm these storms. In these moments when our faith is struggling, when we're trying to trust and believe, I have to remind you of some things and encourage you with some things that you got to keep doing this as you go through these storms. Here's some practical advice for us this morning. As you navigate the storms of life, how do I stay in the boat? How do I trust in him? How do I let my faith be strong? I have to get into God's word. This is not just a history book. This is the bread of life. This is God's heart. This is the gospel message. Even though we may not find every single thing that you and I are going through in life here in the pages, we find the one who always takes everyone through these storms. Find him. Get into the word. Let his word speak over you. Talk with God. During the storms, you don't shut off the communication with him. Turn it up even more. Learn like Paul said, pray without ceasing. That doesn't mean you have to be on your knees on the side of your bed in your prayer closet 24/7. That means don't stop talking with him. So when you feel that anxiety, let that be a trigger to say, God, I need you in this moment. When you're feeling depressed and down, let that be the moment that clicks in your head to say, I need to get with him. I need to talk with Him. God, I need you here. I need to sense your presence. I need your peace. I need your calm. Can you speak over this storm that I'm going through? Talk with God. And let me encourage you, in these storms of life, you need to keep coming to church. You need to be around your church family who can strengthen you, who can encourage you, who can be there for you. It says when we're down, when I'm down, you can hold me up. It says when you're down, I can hold you up. The worst thing we can do when we're going through storms is be isolated. So stay connected. I think it's amazing in this moment that the disciples, the word that they use is they were terrified by what they just experienced. Why this is early on, in fact, that story that I referenced where Jesus walks on the water, and they're like, no, please come. Don't just pass us by, help us. And the wind and the waves calm again. That word that they use later on as they've experienced more and what I believe their belief has been more solidified, it says they were amazed, they were astounded, they were astonished by what they saw. But in this moment, when they're still early in their following of Jesus, they got terrified, scared. Why? Because they realized the power that Jesus was walking through life with. Because the only one that they ever saw who was able to control creation was the God that they read about and memorized scripture about as they were raised as young men in their culture, in their Jewish culture. And now they're seeing this person in the flesh do what only they have heard and read about. God alone is the one who can control creation. Jesus is with us, and He's Lord over the storm. I want you to go really quick as we close out this morning to the very next verse on the very next chapter. And I want us to find some encouragement in how this part of the story ends. Mark chapter 5, verse 1, it says, so they arrived at the other side of the lake. So they arrived. Listen, church, when we're with Jesus, when we stay with Him, we will arrive at the destination He's trying to get us to. It's a promise. It is a promise. And again, our human brain and understanding puts destinations in our own life. Well, I've been really waiting for that promotion. I've been waiting for this financial breakthrough. I've been waiting for a person that I can marry. I've been waiting for kids. I've been waiting for fill in the blank. And we put these destinations through life saying that's where I'm trying to get. But really the final destination that is promised through His Word is eternal existence with Him. And the destination that Jesus wants us to see, that Jesus wants us to experience, is more the revelation that He would give us of who He is over and over and over again in life. You and I, we are changed from glory to glory. Our eyes are opened up in brand new ways, over and over and over again in life. The destination is Him. We always seem to find our way back here, where we claim Jesus is everything. We mean it when we say it here. What was more important in this moment during this storm was not that we got to the other side. but it was learning who we depend on, learning on who we go to, learning on who actually controls the wind and the waves. These disciples were finding out that the destination to this whole thing was Jesus. The destination to what they were looking for, what they were expecting, what they were anticipating was Jesus. It's the hardest, absolutely the hardest thing for me to get a hold of in my life. I have a hard time personally. I don't know what it is about the way my brain works. I'm constantly putting things out there thinking that's the destination. If I could just get there, if I could just experience that. God, if you can get me to this moment. And he's saying, I just want you to be with me in the moment. So hard in our humanness, in the middle of the storm, because we just feel like I'm going to drown. I don't know how I'm going to make it. So, hey, Jesus, could you do something? And he's saying, I already did. I'm here in the boat with you. I already did. I'm in your life. I've given you everything that you need for this whole thing that we're a part of. For however many years you and I are here. I've filled the gap in the chasm so that this thing can be eternal. So the promise can go beyond this life into the next. Jesus is our destination. And when we make him that, we will always get to where we were going.